Hi guys, I'm going to share with you how I drew my painting the other day, how I got it prepared for my painting. And it was of this wolf that I have a little short on, and I'm also creating a long form on the process of the painting. And basically what I do is I use the grid technique and I scale up from there, and I'll show you how that's done. And I switched over to a yardstick because the ruler was too small. So you do need a measurement to go by, and it has to be large enough to whatever your source is going to be. And so what I have here is my reference, and I'm lining it up to the corner of, let's call it my canvas, okay? And then I line up the corner from the top left to the to the bottom right, and then I draw my line. And another thing, if you don't want your reference to be drawn over or damaged, just get one of those clear plastic sleeves that they have at Office Depot, and insert it in there, and then you can use a marker so you can draw your grid on your reference and not damage it. And so I'm showing the grid technique here, and I'm drawing it out on my reference. And see that negative space right there? I thought it was too small, so I'm going to transfer it on over to the larger size. And here it is. Let's assume that my canvas is about this large, okay, which I'm drawing right now as to represent the canvas. You just line it up again, like I said, from one corner to the other. And as far as the point goes, sorry about cropping that top part, but couldn't get any more space on my camera, and I didn't notice that until after. But anyhow, it's right there close by. And then I just continue my line on my source from one corner to the other. So now I'm going to draw the grid on my canvas. And make sure that your center points line up so that your lines can be straight. And I move the yardstick over a little bit so that I can make sure that I do go straight. And I do the same to my reference. I have to create that same grid on my reference so that I can now have a reference to go by with the grid already marked. And you can use as many squares as you want, or in this case triangles. I don't want to throw you off on the triangle wording, but basically you want to make sure that you have the same amount on the top portion that you have on the bottom. And so now what I'm focusing on are my lines and shapes. I'm looking for lines and shapes on my subject, my reference. Okay, and so I'm just drawing them out with a chalk. And you can use one of those charcoal pencils that have a pointier edge. And you don't cover up none of your little lines, because I kind of did on the bottom of his lip. You'll notice that afterwards. So I'm noticing that the nose is very close to the edge, and that is my edge of the canvas. And so I go ahead and I start drawing out that same angle, carrying that same direction that I have onto my surface. Okay, so now that I started, now I'm kind of reading what I have on the center, where about the bottom of his muzzle lines up. And I chose right there. That looks pretty good for me. And then I notice that there's a little triangle and then a line going down. And so I just draw my lines. Lines and shapes is all you have to focus on to get your drawing started. Okay. And so here I'm going to draw my next line, and I choose this one right here. And I'm doing a measurement here. I am going to compare this measurement to another spot on his face. and it looked like it was going to be his muzzle, and it's at the very point of his nose. And there I have my fingers, and I wipe off a little bit of the chalk because I couldn't see the marking, and I wanted to make sure it was right on the tip of the nose. And it looks like I have the same exact length that I have on his muzzle and then the forefront of his eyes. And I'm just double checking, drawing out a little darker. And you want to start off light so that you can be able to make adjustments as you go along. And the more confident you feel about how well it's looking, you can start drawing darker. On my painting, you will notice that I did use a marker to darken it because I didn't want to lose it because I created a wash, and that'll be the video that comes up. Okay, so there I am. I'm going to use that line, and I'm going to make sure, double check, compare it to the length of that line to, again, the muzzle, and it looks pretty accurate to me. So now I go ahead and I measure up his nose, his muzzle, and then I put my finger right where I'm going to start my line to create that forefront of his eyes. And I'm making sure, just double checking everything. And this is called measuring out your reference. Yes, and I do have it. I feel pretty sure. And so now I get my pencil and I draw up the line, and notice how I transfer my hand onto the source with that same angle so that I can get the same direction going upwards. And now I'm going to go for my next line, and I transfer it on again at the same angle. See there? I'm double checking. Then I notice these triangles up here that I can go to next, and they line up to about right there. So I feel pretty confident about that spot. And now I'm checking the length of my ear, and I'm going to compare it to something else. And I choose the muzzle. And so now I check the length of my muzzle, and that's going to be the length of my ear. Okay, and I check to see if there's any other lining that I can line it up with. And it looks like about right there is going to be the length of the ear. So I'm not using the ruler for that angle of the edge of the back of his ear. I'm just kind of moving the ruler away from me and then creating the line. And here I am drawing out the line, carrying on that same angle to the back of his ear, and it lines up pretty well to me. I'm pretty pleased at this point. And now if you notice, his the length of his ear is lower than the other one, his front ear, in comparison to the back ear. And we're going to call it from left to right, front and back. So it just went a little bit slightly higher, and now I can create his ear. Okay, so now that I'm pretty much comfortable to where he's going to line up at, I can start forming his shape now. And I notice right on his muzzle, there's a little ridge that goes right about there. And now I start getting a little more detailed. And keep in mind, this drawing is not going to have to be so detailed because it is going to be used for the painting, which is the one that I ended up posting, and I'll post another for the painting process. So now I'm working with the nose, making sure that the nose is accurate. I'm working with the front now. And I see that there's a couple of little ridges right there, and I kind of shape them up a little. And I can start creating my little curve that I see on his lip. And I kind of wiped off my chalk there a bit. That's why I say if you have a charcoal pencil, which I do, but I just didn't pull it out at the time. I didn't think it was going to cover it up. But I'm just making sure that my little circle down below is going to be at the same angle. And watch this. I'm double checking. And there's a little curve. It kind of goes up a little. And sorry about that. And now I go down to my little triangle and I check kind of the spacing. Double check your work. And I'm going to say that it kind of curves down below. And now I want to see where about my eye is going to land. And you notice on the ruler right now, it's not parallel to his muzzle. So I do straighten out my ruler to where it's actually parallel to make sure that I do have that correct length. And I'm measuring it up to the corner of his eye. And I'm thinking that he's going to, from where I saw him, that his eye's going to land right about there. Making sure. That's the right bottom corner of his eye. And there I go again with my angle. And that is basically it, guys. If you keep your drawing simple, use the least amount of grid squares or grid spaces that you need. If it's not very detailed. If it's very detailed, then I recommend using more grids. And sometimes the squares are better. And if you feel more comfortable with that, because there's so many different drawing techniques that you can approach your reference by. And you know, every artist has their own. Find your own. If this helps you, I actually hope it does. And use it. And so here, remember the line that I had down below. Now I can start curving to the exact shape that I see on the wolf. And he looks kind of funny here because he doesn't have any detail on there. And I really don't want to waste any of my drawing on creating details, so because it's going to be covered. I am just making sure that my proportions are in the right spot. And once I have that, then I can start making adjustments on my painting. Now I'm working with the ear. Sorry about that little beep. I just got a notification. And just kind of playing with the fur to see what direction, so that I can get my mind kind of set to the direction of where the fur is going to go when I start painting the details. And his eye, the same thing goes for the eye, you know, but here I put the pupil in there to see visually how it's going to be when I tackle it. And look at him. He's so cute. He's smiling. And now I can go a little darker because I feel very confident that his other ear is laying on that right spot. And that's it. So let me know if you like this. Please follow the link down below. As soon as I post this one, I will attach the painting process to this, but just give me a few days because I still have to edit that video. I hope you really like this. I hope it helps you. And if it does and you like this information on this content, follow and click that notification bell so that you can be notified for my next videos. And I'll be creating some art tip shorts and then some long form for more in depth. Thank you so much, and you have a good day and stay creative. And there it is done.